Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about reports, and we're going to show you how they can be modified in version 12. The first part of it is managing reports. When you log on to a database, and if we go into tenant reports, notice that at the lower left-hand side, middle left-hand side of the screen, there's a button that says Manage Reports. If that button is muted, if it's not lit up like this, it means you don't have the ability to manage reports. In order to manage reports, what you have to do is over in the logon screen, you go into System Security, and on the Users tab, you select the user and edit it. And down here in the comments field, you have to have one of two things. You have to have /admin, like is here, and that means you can do 1090. You can do backup and manage reports. And if you put /report admin, it means you can manage reports. So the one of those two things has to be in the user profile if you're going to manage reports, be able to change them and save them. Okay. All right, back under tenant reports. Then you can modify a report. If you do that, what it means is that you are going to be able to change the report for this run, for this time you're running it. So for the simple things like adding a one-time add a field to report, remove a field, filter differently than the filter is set for, sort or group by different ways, then you might just want to modify the report. So doing so, if we took a report, and in this case we'll choose our report, it's called the lease abstract, and if we wanted to modify the report, and if we wanted to add a field to it, first of all, let's look and see what the report looks like. We'll preview it on the screen. So here's what the report looks like, and let's say that what we want to do is we want to put this report in sequence by the lease end date. So what we could do is we would then go to filter, and we would choose lease end, and we would say we want, not filter, sort. We want to sort it by lease end. It's sorted by ID. If we want to sort it by the lease end date, we said sort it by the lease end, and you can either do it ascending or descending. And if we want to do descending and put that up ahead of, move it up so it's ahead of the ID, and then when you click on preview, now it's sorted in the lease end date. And this is the ascending or descending would be the one the furthest out is first. You can do the same thing if you wanted to sort by rent amount or by security deposit. So that's one of the things you can do with modify. If you want to add a field to it or take away a field, to add a field you go into the report fields drop down. All of these fields right here can be added to the report, all those different ones. So we'll just say if we want to add the let's see, pick one out. The lease type, which doesn't mean much of anything, but if you want to add the lease type to it, you highlight it here, and over in column fields, you put it in. So we'll put in lease type, and suppose we want to take out something. If we want to take out the move-in date, we would highlight move-in and unmark the box. Now if we run the report, it's basically the same report except that we've added the lease type to it, and we've taken out the move-in date. Those are real simple to do. When you do that, it only saves it for this report, for this time you're running it. If we run the report and then go do something else and back in, those little changes you made aren't there anymore. Now, what we really want to do is we want to make reports that we use all the time, and we don't want to have to recreate them all the time. We want to put them on the list. So here's the list of tenant reports. We want to add a report to the list so that we can run it each time, and it's set up that all we have to do is run it. We don't have to go in and modify anything to make changes to it. So for our example, what we're going to do is we're going to create a report, and the report is going to be a list of all the tenants who moved out between the start date and the end date that we choose for the report. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to find out all the move-outs between date A and date B. So the first thing you do is click on Manage Reports. Then you highlight the report that you want to change around so that it matches what you want, or you can click on New and start from scratch, either one of the two. It's generally easier if you have some of the things that you want in a report may already be in another report, so it's easier to start with one and change it and then save it under a different name so that it runs the report that you're looking for. So the one we're going to use is tenant balances. You highlight the one you want to use and you click on Copy. Okay. Now, we'll start from the left. You can do these two things anytime during the course of what you're doing. First of all, the report information, this is what the name of the report is going to be on the list of reports. So we're going to call this Tenants Who Moved Out. And you can put as much information there as you want to. You want to put enough there so that you can pick it out of the list. Now, what I like to do is if I'm making new reports, I want it to be at the top of the list. So what I do is I put a space in front of the label for it so that it shows up at the top and it's easy for me to find. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and the second thing is on the page layout. This is what the report header is going to look like. So if we ran the tenant balances now, it would say tenant balances. So let's see what the report looks like right now. So we'll run the report. Now I'm using a database that belongs to one of our users, and in order to make it not have any of the tenants' names on it, what I did, I changed all the tenants' names to tenant alias. So every tenant has the same name. So we've got the lease name, the rent, the unpaid charges, etc. So that's what it looks like right now. And what we want to do, we want to get rid of some things. We still want the open credits and the security. We don't want advance payments. We'll want the unpaid charges. We don't want the rent, but we want to add the move-out date. So now we're going to go ahead and make the changes to it. Okay, so the fields that you want to have be in the report or you want to use to do things with the report, filter, sort, group, etc., you choose them from this list of report fields, any or everything that's there. Okay, so what we want to do in this case is we want to add the move out. So we go down until we find move out. So we mark it because that's what our report is about people that moved out. The other thing we want to do is we want to add the manager, because when we finish we're going to show you how to sort it by manager. So we go down to the unit and here's the manager. And so those are the two fields that we're going to add. Okay. Then we're going to modify the driver options, and that's the same thing as the options button over here. Within the modify, within the manage reports, it's associated with report fields. When you just run the report, you have the options tab over here, options button. So we're going to modify the options. We want to do two things. We want to make the page, the print bigger. So we're going to use large print instead of small or normal print. And what we don't want a date, just a single date for the date selection like owner or tenant balance is balances as of a date. What we want is a range of dates. So we want to have the date selection to be a date range. And that'll give us the opportunity to pick a starting date and an ending date. Okay? All right, then we go ahead and save that. And the next thing we want to do is line up our column, put our columns in that we want. These are the things that are going to show up on the report. So we don't want the rent. We want the lease name. We want the unpaid charges. We don't want the advance payments. We want open credits and security. We want the move-out date. And I think let's do the lease end date as well. So we'll go back to the report fields, and we're going to pick up the lease end date. Okay. So here's the lease end date. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to glance at it and see if somebody moved out earlier or after, either before or after they were supposed to move out, before their lease date. So in the column fields, we'll choose lease date as well, lease end date. Now, next thing we want to do is sequence them. Let's put them in the order that we think we want. The lease name is first. The next thing we want to do is probably see the unpaid charges. That's okay. Open credits. The lease end should be in front of the move out. So we want to move it up one. And the security deposits we want at the end. So we're going to move them down. All right, so that's the sequence we're going to stick them in. And now we'll preview the report just to see what's there. All right, now here's the report. It's got lease name, unpaid charges. Whenever it comes up and you have two lines and you want to get rid of one, it'd be better if there was just one line across. So if this just said unpaid as opposed to unpaid charges, that would be better. Other than that, we have the stuff that we want on it. But we've got all these things, a whole bunch of pages, and we don't want to see them all. We don't want to see the ones that we don't have an interest in seeing. So the first thing we're going to do is change this so it only says chart unpaid. And you do that by, in the column fields, you highlight the unpaid charges. It prints what's here, unpaid charges, open credits, lease end. Unless you change it, you want to change it, here's the override label. So we're going to change that to unpaid. Okay. And if we do a quick preview, you'll see that now that line is only one line. It looks a lot cleaner. All right, now let's do the other things we want to do with this report. What we want to do is we want to see the people who moved out within a certain time period. So over in the filter fields, we don't want to see the people moved out prior to the date. We don't want to see the people that moved out after the date or are going to move out after the date. So what we do is in the filter is on status. The status filters are, we want to see everybody. So therefore we don't need status as a filter. Or if you wanted to see everybody but the past inactive, you would mark all the others. All right, but we're going to unmark it because we don't care about the status. We want to get them all. The thing we care about is the move out. And for the move out, we don't want the report date. We want the report date range. And we want to include the range. Okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and preview the report. Let's set our date range for the report. Let's say we want to look at all the move-outs between October 1st and December 31st. So we first of all change the date to October 1st. Then over here we change it to December 31st. And now let's preview the report. All right, now we have a 3-page report, and it's something that we can work with. We may want to tweak it a little bit more. We've got the unpaid, the open credits, lease end, move out, and the security, and we can look down the 3 pages and see everything that's on the pages. And we see the totals, so forth. The sequence right now is in lease. Well, we didn't do anything, so let's put it in some sequence. Right now the sequence is probably in tenant alias, which is the name of the tenant. So what we want to do is sort it in some sequence. Let's say that we want to sort it by the move-out date, and we want it to be in ascending order, oldest to latest. If we preview it now, you notice that it's in, did I choose move-out date? No, I didn't. All right, I choose move-out date, but I didn't move it up ahead of the lease ID. So I'm going to move it up, or you could get rid of the lease ID. It doesn't matter. You can have multiple sequences, move out, lease ID, etc., etc. Now we preview it. Notice now that it goes from 10/1 and it works its way up through the end of December. And what we see on here are things that we would expect to see. We expect to see not much, no security deposits early on, except for this one. And by looking at the lease end and the move out, our first thing that would come to mind is that this tenant left early. His lease wasn't supposed to end until 5/31, and he was out on 10/1, and we still have his security deposit. So that's something we need to do something with. Down here, as you get further to the end, you would expect to have security deposits waiting to be returned because people just moved out within the last X number of days. But one of the values of this report is to show you who you have to return security deposits to, because in many states there are requirements to return the security deposit within X number of days. Okay, so that being the case, why don't we put this in sequence by security deposit so we can see the ones that we want to deal with? And what you would do then is under sort, you would say sort it and do the security deposit, move it up, and put it in descending order. If we put it in ascending order, all the blanks are going to be first. And now when we run the report, all the security deposits are right there in the beginning, and those are the ones that we have more to do with than with the others down here. Now, you can go a step further. If the only thing you wanted to look at were people who had security deposits, then what you would do is you would say, I want to filter, and on security, I want to see only the ones that are not zero. And now when you preview it, and preview it on the screen, now you only get the ones where you've got a security deposit. So you can see how you can get everything and then cut it down to what you're really after. Okay. The other thing that you can do is, now let's go ahead and finish and save this so we can use it over and over again. So what you do, you click on Save, and then you click on Close, and it says Refresh the Report List. You say yes. It refreshes the list, and now here's our report because it had the blank in it. It's at the top of the report, and it's tenants who moved out. Now when you want to run the report, instead of going down and making changes to an existing report, you come up and say, I want to see the tenants who moved out. You say, I want to run the report. You put the date range that you want for the report. And let's say I want to run it from 10/1 through today's date. And I click on Preview. And now I have the report of everything I need to deal with relative to the tenants who still have security deposits but have moved out. And it's there forever and ever. If you want to make a change to it, you can make a change, and it'll prompt you to update the screen. So one of the things that you might want to do if you're a larger company, you might want to sort it by manager, or restrict it to a manager, or create multiple pages per manager. So what we do, to do that, the first thing you do is you would modify the report, and then on the report fields, you choose manager, which we did already, and in the column fields, you don't want to have to see the manager's name unless you want to check to see that it's really doing it right. But what we want to do is we want to group it by manager. Grouping it by manager means that it's one manager with its tenants, the next manager with its tenants. So I'll go ahead and First of all, I didn't check this to see if any of these things have managers, so let me do that first. So in the column fields, let's say we want to see the manager, and we're going to preview it. Okay, and most have no managers, but you've got a couple with. So that'll be good enough to for our purposes of showing you how to do it. So we don't want to see the manager in the list itself, but we want to see the manager. We want to group by manager. So we say group it, and we want to group by manager. And now when we preview it, we have it no manager, this manager, that manager. Now suppose we want to give this page to this person and this page to that person. What you would do then to separate it into pages, you would say, what I want to do is I want to, first of all, display as a section header. And what that does, it puts the name of the person right there. But we would rather have these headings underneath it. So in order to do in section header, you say display before the column header. And now when you preview it, notice that it's the name, the header, etc. Now we want to split it into pages. So what we do is we go ahead and say start a new page, and when you preview it now, you get page 1, page 2, and page 3. All right. And if we go ahead and save that, and so save it, permanently modify the report. If you want to permanently modify it, you say yes. If not, you say no. So in this case, I'm going to say no. We could have created another report and added it to the list. This could have been the tenants who moved out, and the other one would be tenants who moved out by manager.